first thing that I will say to you is that the media covers a wide range of different disciplines and different areas, and it can include online media, of course. And I know that certainly in the Gulf and Middle East, a lot of people use social media. And I have experienced this, and I've been, of course, to a number of countries in the Middle East to understand this. As well as social media, then we also use broadcast media, in other words, radio and television. And then we also use traditional print media. And traditional print media can include several different sort of sectors and segments. Those can be local media or local press, regional, national press, and of course international. But also it can include sector or trade press, as I call it. And that can be press that has, maybe sort of something to do with particular interests, like consumer press, or and hobby-style press, or it may be, sort of trade and technical press. In other words, sort of magazines and publications that focus and concentrate on certain particular sectors and disciplines. And some of the ones that I've experienced in the United Kingdom, for example, are things like, sort of oil, gas, and pipeline news, which is one of the magazines here. Not a big circulation, but a very, very important circulation, of course. And things like Railway Strategies magazine, which was one of those that I was involved with some little time ago. And the idea with that, of course, is that it looks at the rail industry in the UK and Europe, and it concentrates on products and services that are delivered to the rail sector. So there's a huge number of different titles and different publications and so on. Now, one of the best ways of finding out which media is appropriate for you and for your business is to sort of do a simple test. And that simple test can be sort of really saying, well, who do you need to target? And in fact, I think if you can see the first slide that I've done, and what I will do is I will zoom So what you need to do there is not just think about those who you want to sell to, but also those that you want to influence. And one of the examples that I often give about that is a little while ago, I did some media relations and public relations for a business that devised an anti-jackknife device for articulated wagons. Now, if I can just explain very briefly what that is, if you have an articulated wagon, of course, with a tractor unit at the front and a trailer at the rear, then there is a danger that if you brake suddenly, especially if the trailer is unladen, that it will jackknife. So in other words, that the trailer will spin round and will cause a blockage or damage or destruction or even death and injury. So what we did here, the particular client had devised a device, a mechanical device, that eliminated this possibility. So if you can imagine, then we had to deal with the media to highlight the existence of the product and the benefit of the product as well. So crucially, you've got to think about the benefit of what you can provide to the audience. Now, in terms of the target audience that we had to relate to, then of course you need to think about the people who are going to buy the product, and that can be the manufacturers of the tractor units, so Volvo, Scania, MAN, and so on, of course. But then also the manufacturers of the trailers as well, and there are sort of European companies such as Fruoff and so on that produce these. But then also you need to think about the people who are maybe hauliers who will be purchasing this, maybe people who are construction companies and so on who will be buying it, but also organisations like maybe police or road safety campaigners and so on. They won't be buying the product, but they will be major influencers and champions, as we call them, of actually sort of requiring the product to be fitted and maybe making it compulsory or mandatory, as we say. So from that point of view, then the audiences that you deal with, the targets that you deal with, are not necessarily people who will buy, but people who will be major influencers. And this is what I'm saying sort of on this first slide. Decide which audiences you want to target, and from then onwards, which media will reach them. So you have to think about what the key audiences are likely to listen to and read and look at in terms of both online and offline media. And certainly, just to emphasise, when I talk about media, I'm not just talking about magazines and newspapers. I am talking about radio and television, and also, crucially and critically, online media. Now, I will sort of be answering questions, of course, a little bit later on, and also posing a few questions. But the thing I want to say there is that online media has become very, very much an integral part of getting to grips with the media. And in fact, if you're thinking about who to target and how to target them, then one of the things I will suggest is do use online resources to make sure that you are getting to the right people. Now, certainly in the UK and Europe, and I'm not sure about the Gulf states, but certainly in the UK and Europe, then there are a lot of online resources that are available that do have directories of the media, and those directories will include the editorial contacts. So, in other words, who you need to be speaking to or emailing. And also potentially their Twitter addresses or their LinkedIn addresses, and those are ones that I use a lot and that I would urge all delegates and attendees at this particular seminar to think about. So please do have a look at Twitter and also at LinkedIn, and consider those journalists that you can possibly target. And I found that certainly by targeting them online, they become more familiar with you and they understand your interactions, because of course it's not just about retweeting or favoriting or whatever it might be, it is about interacting with people. And if you can do that, then it means that if you send them a press release or you telephone them to talk to them, then they are familiar with who you are, which is a very, very important thing. And that means that if you are able to interact with them in that respect, you do have an advantage over your competition, because it means that you are familiar with the journalists and they know you as well. So we've talked on the first slide about who you want to target, using print or broadcast or internet media or a combination of them, because there is, I would always say, no single magic bullet, as we call it. So in other words, there isn't one single channel that works perfectly for everybody. It's about testing and measuring and using different channels in conjunction with each other. So for each media, you have to identify exactly which audiences and interact with them in that respect. Now, on our next slide, these messages. So once you've decided on the targets and you've decided on the media, you have to decide what you're going to say to them. So think about what you've got that's of interest, what's relevant to the audience and the media, of course, and what are the key messages to convey. Now, the mere fact, and please, I do apologise for what I'm about to say, but the mere fact that you exist isn't necessarily of interest to the media. What I would say is that you have to consider things which are newsworthy. So in other words, what helps them gain audience figures or helps them on online advertising and support and sponsorship revenues, and also what helps them potentially sell magazines or newspapers as well. So think about things that are useful and interesting, and those will generally be expansion programs or new contracts that you've won, or perhaps circumstances where you're exporting or something like that. So things that are of particular interest, really, and make sure that they are also timely as well. One of the things there is that the media is a hungry mouth to feed, as we say. So please do make sure that you have plenty to say and that you are aware of what is going on at that particular moment in your sector and in the media. I do find, again, that Twitter is a very, very good way of finding what's going on at a particular moment in the media, and actually being able to respond to it swiftly, because a lot of journalists will want quick content and very, very quick comment from you. And if you are able to talk about things that are of relevance and appropriate and will, again, help them with their audience figures and help them sell publications and newspapers, then you will have a very, very strong way of communicating and gaining the upper hand from your competition as well. The next thing is about campaigns and what you need to look at. The first one on the list that we've got down here, which I'm sure you can see, is press releases. Now, with press releases, it's about telling the media succinctly and shortly and briefly and to the point what your story is, why you're contacting them, and what are you saying. Now, do please be aware that the media tends to edit from the foot of the page. What that means is that if you write 500 words of wonderful prose and it's very, very interesting and you're very proud of it, and then you press the button to email it, which I would recommend, to a journalist, and you never see it again, well, it can often be the case that what might have happened is that the journalist only has space for 200 words. And those 200 words, they won't look through your 500 words of the press release and then reduce it and move it about and carefully edit it. All they will do in the 10 seconds or so that they've got available is actually edit from the foot. So in other words, they will take away the bottom 300 words and they will leave the top 200 and see if it makes sense. And if it does make sense, the temptation for most journalists is to copy and paste. So in other words, they will just take a copy of what you've put and they will paste it into the slot that's available in their media outlet, and they will see if it makes sense, and if so, they will use it. So please don't be alarmed if you send a press release and don't hear anything from the journalist. It either means one of two things, that it's not appropriate and it's not timely for them, and therefore please try again, and please keep on trying. Don't give up, sort of, if you don't get a press release immediately into the journal or into the publication. The other thing it might mean is that they have used it and they haven't got time to tell you. And journalists will generally not tell you if they are going to use something. So when you do send an email, by all means include a photograph. Because if you are able to include a photograph, then that means that a picture tells 1,000 words, as they say, and it does mean that they will be able to possibly use it more easily. They will be able to use the caption, use the photograph, use the image more easily. So that's press releases. Now, excuse me, the second one down is a press pack. Now, with a press pack, then that really just gives journalists some information about your business or your company. So it's not something that they will necessarily use straight away, but it's something to introduce yourself to the journalists. And a press pack would normally contain a little bit of background information about you. So that could be something like, founded in 1958, XYZ PLC is the third largest manufacturer of widgets in the Gulf region. It employs 13,000 people and operates from sites throughout, etc., etc. So it's the sort of general information that you will be able to produce. You can also include in the press pack some imagery, some biographies of key personnel and spokespeople within the business, and perhaps also some existing press releases as well. The next one I want to mention is articles and features. With articles and features, then that really is a more detailed way of getting into the media. With articles, I wouldn't suggest that you write 1,500 words or 2,000 words or whatever it might be straight off and then send it to a journalist and hope they publish it. What I would suggest is that you do a synopsis or a summary of the article. Get in touch with a journalist in your particular sector, if it's construction or manufacturing or whatever it might be, and talk to them about a particular issue that you are an expert in. If you can say to them that you are proposing writing an article, which of course you won't get paid for, but you get potentially into the magazine or publication, if you say you're proposing writing an article and do a summary maybe of 7 or 8 bullet points that you are going to cover in the article, then the journalist may well come back to you and say, thank you, very interesting, please can we also add this, or can we remove that, or whatever. And once you've got an agreement with that, then the journalist will probably say, that's lovely, can I have 1,500 words or something similar by a week next Tuesday? So they will give you a deadline and also a summary of the number of words or the word count that they require. And then it's up to you, of course, to produce that. What they will often do then is when it's published or produced into a journal or a publication, they will then byline it to you. In other words, that it's not attributed to them, but it is attributed to you and your business, and it will probably have a photo or a brief biography of you at least, and maybe even some contact details for your business. That means that you get the kudos of being endorsed by that particular publication. So they are regarding you as being an expert. The features bit, which is the second point down just here, if you can see me moving my mouse around there, right? The features bit is that journalists often concentrate on things maybe 3, 6, or even 12 months in advance. And especially for monthly publications, if you're looking at sort of trade journals and things like that. What it means is that they will have a list of those particular features or areas that they're going to focus on in the future for March, April, May, June, etc., etc. Now, there, what I would suggest that you do is that you ask them for a copy of the features list, you look at it and you see if there are any particular areas that you want to comment on or that you feel that you have an expertise on. And if you can do that, then what it means is that you will be able to contribute to that particular feature or that particular publication, and the journalist will obviously attribute that to you. Case studies are really more sort of thorough endorsements or testimonials of what you've done for a particular business. So if a contractor has asked you to construct a skyscraper, shall we say, then, or a shopping mall, or a business, then if you have been able to do that with particular expertise, and they've asked you and you have responded and you've done it in a timely fashion and you've got some images, then that's a great case study. Those can be used internally on your website. They can be sent out in newsletters, of course, but also they can be sent out to trade journals and publications, and also regional, national, and potentially international publications, and used there quite extensively. Press conferences are about you organising an event where journalists will attend, generally for you to announce something. So it might be for you to announce your annual results, or it could be for you to announce that you are merging, or that you are taking over another business, or something that's generally of particular interest. And what normally happens at press conferences is that you and your colleagues will perhaps sit at the front, and journalists will attend and will ask questions, and they will then go ahead and write their copy, or perhaps interview you on video, which could be on TV or radio potentially, or even YouTube as well. Which brings me on to interviews. Interviews are a very useful way of indicating your expertise in a particular subject. So what I would do there is I would get in touch with relevant journalists, and I would suggest to them that you are comfortable and happy and have expertise in particular areas, maybe show a brief list or a resume of your qualifications, and what you can then do is talk to them about areas where you feel qualified or comfortable in giving interviews or opinions. Photography we've mentioned before. Media briefings is really, as much as anything, a little bit like a press conference, where you will actually get in touch with the journalist, sometimes by email and sometimes by telephone or even online media. And I've done this more recently on Twitter as well, and advise them of impending announcements, so that sometimes they have a little bit of a heads up, as we call it, a head start on certain particular activities or events. With regard to events, of course, that can be something like a trade event, or a seminar, or a particular a particular occurrence where you want to talk to particular journalists, or even to prospective buyers or purchasers of your product or service. Research is an interesting, useful one, because with research, then it's about showing your expertise and showing your business's capability in looking at future developments, perhaps. Publications, of course, then we've covered publications as far as the media is concerned, but also, of course, I would talk about brochures and newsletters and product information, because newsletters especially are a useful, worthwhile way of disseminating or publishing information about your business. And as much as anything, it's then about getting a full database and talking to sort of people who might be influencers or buyers, or maybe even businesses that will operate alongside you as strategic partners or allies. Press office backup, of course, that's an internal function, which is where you sort of make sure that you are able to provide journalists with full details and information at a very early stage, because journalists will often want things there and then with a degree of immediacy. If they don't get it immediately from you, they may well go somewhere else. Sponsorships and awards are a great way of you sort of indicating your expertise and understanding. Your website, of course, should have copies of all your press releases and media releases, and also media success as well. So if you've featured in a particular magazine or publication or radio, TV or webinar, then definitely I would put that onto a press area of your website. Exhibitions we mentioned, and seminars and presentations, definitely a very, very valuable way of getting your message across, because it effectively provides the endorsement of the company for which you are providing the presentation or the seminar. I'm not detailed because of timing, of course, as far as press releases are concerned, is let you have details of the slides as we go along. But basically, just to say, as I mentioned before, summarising the news in the first paragraph so that when the journalist decides to edit from the foot of the press release, you don't lose it. Make sure that you write in a clear, factual style as well, and ideally include a quote from a key spokesperson, because I think that that's a great way of getting your message across. Now, that gives you a quick summary of the layout of getting the message across. As I say, I will make the details of this seminar available to all delegates if you wish, and therefore you can have a look at this in more detail. These give us a little information about the types of press release, which we've mentioned in brief detail before: appointments, launches, investments, acquisitions, expansions, new facilities, and so on and so forth. Media that we use, of course, I have mentioned a few moments ago. Newspapers, definitely, of course. Radio and sector press. Chambers of commerce publications are interesting, because certainly when I've worked in the Gulf states in the past, then I've seen that chambers of commerce are very, very powerful in terms of what they can offer and how they can support businesses. So I would certainly kind of offer your services to chambers of commerce. Websites and social and digital media, definitely, of course, and then magazines and regional and national television. If you have particular contacts in these media outlets, then it means that they are more likely to come to you for questions and queries. So I would certainly try and sort of make sure that you actually interface with them as much as possible. Main purposes, we've got sort of 6 points down there. Inform, guide, promote, generate interest, enhance reputation, and clarify issues. I think those are fairly sort of self-explanatory. There are also other reasons to be in touch with the media. One, to counter rumour and speculation, very, very important, because if there are negative rumours in the media about your business and your operations, then you need to do something about those to scotch or to quell any kind of problems. Broadcasting good news and raising and maintaining profile, very, very much so, which goes hand in hand with announcing success. Influencing opinion is an interesting one, because that's almost what they call a nudge. And the idea with nudging is, and it's a fairly sort of recent PR and media term, the principle of nudging is that you gradually educate and inform your target audiences, your groups, about what you're doing, so that it softens kind of their approach. So they might feel a little bit negative at first about something that you're doing, about a new development or something like that, but certainly if you nudge and just feed a little bit of information, then that means that they will become more comfortable about the particular things that you're doing. Generating business, of course, and engaging public with your enterprise is absolutely vital, because once you've got the public on your side, then you can sort of convert that into them being positive advocates of your skill set and your particular business sort of credibilities, but also make sure that sort of they reduce complaints as well. Now, basics of a good press release, absolutely, those 6 points down there: accurate, interesting, informative, targeted, ready to use, and of value as well. Now, the ready to use bit, I would say down there, and I'm just going to time, but the ready to, please do make sure, and these are things that I've seen so many times, unfortunately, in press releases, that everything that you do is grammatically correct and is spelled correctly. Because what does happen with a lot of media, as I touched upon earlier, is that they will copy and paste. In other words, that they will look at your words and they will just take a copy of them and effectively right-click and then left-click to paste in. And if they do that, then your spelling mistake might still be there. And if somebody then complains to the journalist or to the journal about it, it will make them look foolish. And they do not like to look foolish. So I would make sure that you get everything checked and checked and checked again. Also, please make sure things are of value, and that's to you, to your company, to your clients, and also to generate new business and to enhance your trade. But also critically, to make sure that you are not losing trade, that it's not going somewhere else, or that public opinion is turning against you. Now, one of the things I just want to touch upon in the last sort of 10 minutes, of course, is online media, because online media has become increasingly important. We've talked briefly about LinkedIn and Twitter in particular, and I think that certainly this seminar will be incomplete if we didn't mention online media. So, things that I've prepared here is differences. So online media differentiates from traditional media in a few aspects. The first one being quality. Sometimes online media, you need to check your source, because I'm sure that we'll all have seen on resources such as Facebook where people do post things and it turns out that they are incorrect, either intentionally or unintentionally, so they could be untrue. The thing there is that people tend to trust what they see on online media, but often without checking it. So make sure that you check. Also, from an online media point of view, it can have a huge reach. I'll give you an example. Quite some short time ago, then I posted something on Twitter, and I didn't think much about it, and it was a copy of a spoof article from one of the UK national newspapers, The Sun. And in this particular newspaper, they put about the views of the founder, or one of the founders of the internet, Tim Berners-Lee. And they put about how one particular magazine regarded the internet as being. So I posted this on Twitter, never thought anything about it, and within a week it had been retweeted by over 6,000 people. And I found that astonishing, actually. So if you find something of interest, then by all means, it can often run away with you. So do make sure that what you're doing is correct and accurate, because it will be reposted regularly, and of course it's immediate and it's permanent as well. Even if you withdraw the post, I've seen quite a lot that people will have taken screen grabs or screenshots of these things, and it will be visible in the future. Now, the other thing is that what the internet has done as well is it's helped democratize access to the media. So people who wouldn't normally be able to access media and journalists are able to do so, and I'm very much in favor of that. So it does mean that journalists are more pressurized and busier than ever, which also gives you an opportunity, if you have an interesting message and you have a well-reasoned and articulate message, that you are able to gain an advantage over your competition. Now, a couple of other things. First one, record building. Here we are. Now, that, as you can see, is actually a screen grab of one of my tweets from quite some time ago. And it was posted and had quite a lot of comments and quite a lot of people liking it as well. It was a particular seminar that I was doing last year based on managing your online reputation up in Lancashire, which is at the top end of Great Britain, top end of England. And I was sort of talking in detail, and actually because it was quite a popular seminar, I thought I would share it with people, and that meant that I was building my own reputation. So in other words, making it look better. This next one is a slightly humorous. Now, I'm not expecting sort of our, and I do apologise for the image, I'm not expecting our delegates to know necessarily who this is or what it's from, but it actually is from a Queen or Freddie Mercury video, I Want to Break Free. And it's a song in which he's vacuum cleaning the carpet. Now, the great thing there is you can see that it was about 18 months ago, August 2014. I was talking about the European Union banning, rather stupidly, the sale of high-powered vacuum cleaners. And it was an interesting thing because it was picked up by the national television media in the United Kingdom. I was contacted by one of the editors of ITV News, who actually sent a cameraman around to my house and got me vacuum on national TV news. And that's purely by the power of Twitter. So what I will say there is, please, sort of don't, sort of disregard it or treat social or online media as being a separate thing. Think about it as being one of your integrated channels of communication. That's the best way to consider it. Here, that particular one there is sort of basically it's about sort of people who've said, I don't agree with a particular point. And if they don't agree with a particular point, then it's sort of, that's often a gift to the media. In other words, it's a very, very powerful, strong thing to say. So what I would say is, do by all means, if you feel that something is right or that you have sort of the ability to back it up or you have evidence to say something, by all means do use sort of that with your online media channels, and also for using sort of within maybe sort of traditional, conventional media. What campaigns go right, and this was again a Twitter thing. You'll see that that's from Sky News, and it was retweeted by a gentleman called Alistair Stewart. Alistair Stewart is one of our ITV newscasters, a very very grand and very statesman-like newscaster who's been going for many years on independent television news, and he retweeted that. It was tweeted 144 times, and in fact the person who lost the medals found the medals or had them returned to him, which was good. Online media can be used for turning things around. Now, in this particular example, what happened was that I bought what they call a Scotch egg from Marks and Spencer's, and Marks and Spencer's, which actually is just down the road from where I live. Then I bought this this Scotch egg and cut it into two, and there was no egg in the middle. So I tweeted Marks and Spencer's and said, excuse me, but it seems that your product is slightly incomplete. And I joked about it, and they sent me a tweet back which was equally jokey and rather good, and then asked me for sort of my address, and then they sent me a lovely letter with a gift card for £5, which you will see on the letter from the 22nd of September 2014, which is down here. So it's definitely how you do customer service and how you turn a negative on social media, online, and especially Twitter, into a positive. It can become very, very powerful indeed. And I then shared that on Google+, I shared it on Facebook and Twitter and other channels, including Instagram and so on. And I also talked to people in seminars about it. Now, the last couple of ones I want to talk about, because we are conscious of the time here a little bit, is this. I appeared again on national television news some little time ago. In fact, it was January 2014, I think this was, and it was about Lloyds Bank, one of the UK banks that had been mis-selling particular products such as pensions and life policies and so on. I tweeted that I'd been contacted by Lloyds Bank and that they'd asked me if I felt that I'd been missold to, which I didn't think was very professional. I tweeted about it. It was picked up by the national news, and the national journalists on independent TV news rang me up and asked me if I wanted to appear on the news. So what we have here, and I'm not going to demonstrate it to you, but what we have here is a video of me on the national news talking about my particular experience, and then sharing it a little bit later on YouTube. There you go. The last thing I very briefly want to touch on is LinkedIn. Underutilized resource as far as the media is concerned. A lot of media professionals do use LinkedIn, so I would recommend that you have a look, find out from your Googling and sort of, your general research as to who to contact in the media. Make a list of it, make a database, and also then try and target them on LinkedIn. If you can do that, and then of course also share your press releases, so you can also then distribute and share information and news and external business about your particular company on LinkedIn. So I hope that's been useful. I appreciate that we are a little bit tight on time, so I will now sort of hand over and ask if anybody's got any questions. Thank you very much indeed for listening. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chris, for a very interesting presentation. Folks, we are open for question and answers. You can either put your question in the chat box or you can raise the hand icon available on your webinar console. So let me go straight to the first question that we have from Ms. Sena Uzair. And the question is it better to outsource social media marketing or take care of it in-house?
Very good question, and thank you for asking. I do a lot of social media marketing for certain clients, and I do find that so if you're going to do it, or if you're going to outsource it to a third party, you need to make sure that that third party knows your business very thoroughly, because if they don't, then all they will end up doing is be reposting or retweeting or talking about things that are not particularly relevant to your business. So it's not about having an IT function. I do find that a lot of businesses outsource social media marketing to web designers and developers, and in my opinion that's the wrong thing to do. The right thing to do is actually, if you're going to outsource it at all, outsource it to a media professional that knows your business, and the important thing is that they do know your business. Thank you.
Okay, we have another one. Can you give some examples of how we could generate public relation using social media?
Absolutely, yes. I've got a great example. In the United Kingdom, at the moment, I'm doing a lot of work for a campaign group called WASPI, W-A-S-P-I, and that stands for Women Against State Pension Inequality. And it's a pressure group where women have been disenfranchised, as we call it. In other words, they've been ignored for quite some time about their pensions. So they're now sort of trying to take action against the government. And excuse me. We have opened a Facebook page, but also, crucially, over the last 6 months, I've organised, and I actually do, a Twitter page for them as well. And with that, then what we've done is we've interacted with journalists, we've also interacted with members of parliament and other people who've been disenfranchised in this particular group to talk about taking action and talk about problems and issues. And it's worked extremely well, because we've found that journalists have got in touch with us via Twitter, not particularly Facebook, I have to say. Facebook has been mainly for finding people who've had similar problems. But with the journalists, then they do use Twitter a lot, as I say. And what we've been able to do is actually target them, talk to them, interact with them, engage with them, and they've actually rung me up and sent me emails, asked me questions, and we've then got into the national media and also onto radio and television. In fact, on Monday, we were on one of the national Sirius radio programs, Radio 4. We're also on the BBC Breakfast programme 3 times, and also on BBC Radio 5 Live, and on a magazine programme which was actually presented by a lady who has the same issue with her pension. So very, very powerful, very, very strong. So I would certainly recommend interacting with journalists on social media.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chris. We have another one, and that is, how should companies measure their social media marketing success?
It's a very interesting question. Thank you for asking that. Traditionally, media and public relations has had problems with people measuring success because often we don't know. I think that there are several ways in which you can measure success. The first, of course, is to say, well, okay, if you get a sale, or if you organize a sale, or if your turnover increases, then you can regard that as being a success. Sometimes people will not know how they've heard of you, and that is one of the problems, because in that respect, if you say, well, okay, a particular piece of business was won because you did a social media campaign or an online media campaign, fantastic. That means that then you can tick the box and say, well, okay, me tweeting these particular things, or me being on LinkedIn or Facebook or Google Plus or whatever, has resulted in success. I would tend to say that there are other ways also of measuring success. One can be reputation management, or building reputation, or improving credibility as well. And those are things which traditionally it's been difficult to measure the success of. But certainly, if you look at social media, then certainly, Facebook shows metrics, and Twitter now also shows metrics of sort of how many times people have seen particular posts, how many interactions people have had, sort of how many times people have had page impressions and so on. These are all metrics and measurements where you can demonstrate potential interaction or success. But the true measure, to my mind, is actually saying, well, okay, these particular things all work together to improve your sales or increase your turnover. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. We have another one, and that is, based on trends, what do you suggest will be the most powerful medium in the future?
Oh, interesting. Well, I see certainly a rise of digital and social media. I think that sort of blogs are certainly very, very powerful. As far as printed media is concerned, then it's almost the old adage of sort of the death of printed media has been much exaggerated. I do think that certainly publications, magazines, sector-specific trade publications and consumer publications are still of interest. But I do find also that broadcast media is quite strong, even though then because of the rise of the number of channels, it's become much more diverse. One of the interesting things there is that I was looking at some old statistics and figures for sort of particular programs on BBC TV in the UK. And back in the 1970s, when I was born and so on, then you used to get audiences of sort of 25 million people, and so that was at the time almost 1/2 of the whole population of the United Kingdom. Now you're lucky if you get an audience for a program of 2.5 million. So it's now 1/10 per program. That means that there's inevitably less influence, of course, but it means that also people who use the media and PR have so many more channels to look at. That means that so it's both a good thing because you can actually increase your spread across different numbers of channels, different types of media, but also it's a bad thing because it means that you've got to keep track of them all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. The next one is, what are some common media marketing mistakes that businesses make?
Excellent question. Thank you very much indeed, sir. I think the common mistakes are, well, first of all, not being specific as to what your message is. So, in other words, saying that you exist. As I mentioned before, one of the difficulties is that nobody, sadly, is interested in the fact that you exist. It has to be that you're doing something useful or different or a benefit to them or to your audience. So if you have a problem that you've overcome, or if you expanded in a declining market, or you've improved profit in a difficult environment, this sort of thing is often of interest. Also, sending information and press releases to the wrong journalist. So do please make sure that you correctly target who you are going to send it to. Give you a quick example. In national newspapers, for example, it's pointless sending sort of something about health, shall we say, to the education journalist. So make sure that you sort of do find, the right people to talk to. The excuse me. The other thing is constantly chasing journalists. Send them fresh information. If you don't achieve success in sending a press release, don't chase them. Don't sort of ask them why they haven't published it or whatever. Move on to the next thing and find another reason to get in touch with them. A news story, something that's fresh, because it might just be the case that it wasn't sort of timely or not appropriate for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. And we have one last one, and that is, how much do you think media education is important for employees?
I think it's very important, and it's become even more important. It's an excellent question, thank you, because I see that a lot of people have access to social media, and I work for some businesses, or I do some PR and media work for some clients and businesses where a lot of their employees have access to social media. What that means is that sort of sometimes they can be saying inadvertently or sometimes even intentionally the wrong thing or negative things about their employer. And if they're doing that, then I think that can be very, very damaging, very detrimental to your business. So I think that sort of what you need to have is a media policy. So certainly a social media policy for what people can and can't say, and what maybe ultimately are disciplinary or even dismissible offences for certain people in social media, but also making sure that you have the right spokespeople, so that if, say for example, somebody with a microphone or a TV camera comes along from one of the media outlets, or even a notebook as a journalist, that you make sure that the right people are talking to them and are delivering the right message about your business as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chris, and thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. That brings us towards the end of this webinar. Any concluding remarks from your side, Mr. Chris, before we end this session?
Only to say that thank you very much indeed for asking me to present this. Thank you very much indeed for delegates for taking the time to join and to listen as well, and also for such interesting and well-informed questions. And it was a delight to answer the questions, which were very, very appropriate. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. It was lovely having you and listening to your presentation. Once again, I really want to thank you on behalf of GBNTC for your valuable time in sharing valuable information with us. And thank you all of those who have attended this webinar. We are recording this webinar and it will be uploaded on our website. So please stay tuned to webinar.gbntc.com for updates or for downloading the soft copy of this presentation. With that, I'd like to end this webinar and you all will be automatically dismissed once this session ends. Thank you very much and you all have a good day. Bye-bye. Thank you, Mr. Chris, once again.
Thank you. Very welcome. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye now.